Yo, it is editing colossal, and I do want to just say before the video starts, I got these sizes really fucking wrong. I said it was 480 by 400. I was really close with the large, which is what I received. It is 482 by 406, which is that is ridiculously specific, and the XL is 914 by 406. Good lord, I don't know why these pads are so goddamn specific, but yeah, hope you all enjoy the video. Yo, what is going on, guys? I'm back with another review video. It is not on my Extrafy M42. It is actually going to be on my PureTrak MF2. Very, very similar in names. I didn't even notice that until I said that out loud. But I do really think that this pad has a lot of potential, but I think there are some improvements that actually could be made with their next pad. In terms of like the really quick things that I can get out of the way immediately, the surface itself, while just rubbing your hand across like this, feels almost similar to a Cold Clutch Rapid or a Lethal Gaming Gear Jupiter. The main reason I feel like this pad is very similar to those two in particular is it feels very silky. It's a very, very soft and nice fabric that they're using here, which is really good if you don't use an arm sleeve. I feel like this level of comfort is very rare to come by. Another thing is the base. I do actually think that this pad has a pretty good base. I do feel like it's a bit heavier than some other control pads, which might be why it lays perfectly flat straight out of the box. I've had no issues with this thing curling up like this. It's even hard to even curl this pad. Like when it's rolled up, it laid perfectly flat right out of the box. I do feel like this pad is a bit heavier, so maybe that is why. It's not a bad thing. It actually cements the pad on my desk a lot better because you can see that the base is still going to move a little bit, which look at how difficult that is for me to do. I'm trying really hard. I'm shaking the shit out of my monitor. But the base is really, really impressive. Out of like for a $30 mouse pad, that base and the weight and laying flat perfectly out of the box is all great things that you can get on a budget pad. Although something that I do feel is very budget is the size. It is 480 by 400, I believe, and that is a very it's I just do not like that size at all. I feel like 420 should be the absolute minimum for height for this pad in particular, and let me explain why. So when I play, I like to have my pad all the way at the edge of my desk so that I have one level for how my arm is moving, and it just keeps me very consistent. Because the initial friction is so high, I actually would lose a lot of vertical movement. Even for things like aim training, I actually would regularly go off the pad. It did happen once in Apex, but it didn't really bother me all that much. But it did bother me that it would mess me up in aim trainers. That is like the one place I don't really expect to run out of mouse pad. So in order to counteract that, I had to move my pad quite a bit higher so that I wouldn't reach the top. I would maybe go to like here, and you can still see that that is not a whole lot. That's like maybe an inch or two of extra space that I have. I just think that better height on this pad would really, really make it stand out at $30. Even if they bump it up to 35, I feel like just a little bit extra on the height would make this pad so much better to me. But in terms of performance, I had a lot of confidence with this pad actually. In games specifically like Valorant, I had a lot of confidence with this pad, not so much Apex, mainly because of the high initial friction, like I said. The initial friction is definitely something that is a downside to me on this pad. I do feel like it is a bit heavy, especially on a control pad. I know that the initial friction is going to be heavier than hybrid or speed pads, but this level, especially for how small the pad is, I think is what held me back vertical tracking specifically. Side to side was perfectly fine. I have no issue with it being 480 width wise. It's really just that depth. So for games like Apex or Fortnite or even some aim training scenarios, I do feel like this pad makes it just a bit harder, especially with games with high TTK, and it's just going to be a slight adjustment period. You're going to really have to move the pad around, which is something I want to be able to recommend pads where you can just lay it on your desk and use it and adjust to the surface, but having to adjust to the size is going to be a big downside for me. But the good thing about this pad, it is not as muddy as an Odin Eclipse or a GPZ1. It is nowhere near that level of like, I can't wait to slug my hand through mud. It doesn't make your mouse feel like 100 grams, so that's a plus. While I do completely understand that most games do not require a whole lot of vertical tracking, I do feel like a bigger size would really make this pad stand out to me. I just want to be able to recommend it for all games. Like I said, this whole thing is for $30, and that price is really what makes it stand out to me personally. The performance, I don't feel like would really elevate your aim to the next level. I do feel like the performance per dollar is ridiculously good on this pad. $30 is, you can find good pads for $30, but this is just adding into that list now, depending on the games that you play. While I wouldn't really recommend it for Apex or Fortnite, I would not mind using this pad for Valorant or CS. I feel like this pad is really, really good for those two games in particular. In a very short comparison with this pad to others, I do feel like the Lethal Gaming Gear Jupiter is probably going to be the closest, only because it has that same silk-like texture on the surface, the same really good stopping power. The glide is actually very similar, but the biggest difference is the Jupiter has lower initial friction than this pad does. While I do think that this pad is a good performer for Valorant, I just can't recommend it for all games like I can other pads, and I feel like that's really unfortunate because they are doing really good. I actually really do like this pad. I just wish it was a bit deeper. That's really the only issue I have with the pad. The high initial friction, like I said, I'm fine with getting used to a new surface. That's perfectly fine. That's like what being a reviewer is kind of like. You know, when you do different mouse pads, you have to get used to the surface. It's just the depth is something that's really unfortunate because, like I said, I did go over my pad. But yeah, that pretty much is all for the review. I think my next review is probably going to be on my X-Lite Mini. This mouse is actually fucking insane. I really, really like this mouse. The shape and everything. The weight is so good, and the feet. It's just really impressive what Pulsar was able to do with only releasing like one mouse, actually. And then they make a V2 in the Mini, which is incredible. But yeah, that's all for the review, and I hope to see you on the next one. Peace.
That's a good way to be, bro.